In this video, I'm going to show you how to make an APAP system in MATLAB and in Simulink. So this system can theoretically be used to help someone breathe, and in this system, the user is going to be able to set the low pressure of the air, the high pressure of the air, as well as the humidity of the system. So let me quickly give you a demo of the app before we start with making it from scratch. If I'd like to start the system, I can simply hold in the button for a standard period of time, which we can set in the code. And then once the system is on, as you can see, it's in breathing at the moment, you'll see that the pressure starts to increase and then decrease again. Now if I want to go into settings mode, for example, I want to set the low pressure of the airwaves, I can press the button again and the lights go blue to show that I'm in settings mode. Now I can set the air pressure to, let's say, 50. I go to settings, the high pressure or mode 3. I can make that much higher, for example at around about 90. And then I can set the humidity, let's say, at 20%. And now we're back in breathing mode, as you can see. And now you'll see that the lamps will start to indicate how the person breathes in and out. And then also on the scope, you'll be able to see how the person is breathing in and out. And then the humidity will obviously stay consistent. So there goes a breath in, and then after a certain period of time, the breath will go out again. And that periodization is set by setting the breaths per minute. So we can do this by going to simulation and then library and then searching for chart and adding this to our project. Now this is going to be the brain of our system. This is where all the coding is going to happen. But for now, in part 1, I'm only going to show you how to connect everything to this chart, and then in part 2 I'm going to show you how to actually code the chart. So now let's set a few inputs and outputs for this chart. Firstly, we're going to set all the input values. So you can do this by going to modeling and then clicking the symbols pane. Now we can add a data value. So the first data value we want to do is of type input, and this is going to be the knob. And the knob is used to actually set the low pressure and the high pressure and the humidity of the airwaves. And now if we go back to our model, you can see that we have an input called knob. So let's add a few more inputs. We're going to add a button as well, and the button is going to be used to switch between modes. And then lastly, we're going to add a breaths per minute as input, and this is going to set the frequency of our waves, so we can just call this BPM. Now we can set the output variables. So firstly, we're going to set an output data, which is going to be called mode, and this is going to show us what mode the system is currently in. And secondly, we're going to set an output data for the PWM signal, and then also an output data for the humidity. So these two values we're going to connect to a scope so that we can see that the humidity stays constant in the system, and then the PWM signal is going to represent the breaths in and the breaths out in the system. And then lastly, we want to show how the person is actually inhaling and exhaling using lamps. So we're going to call this LED 1, and then you're going to add LED 2 and 3 as well. So now we have the inputs and the outputs on the chart. So now we can add some other equipment from our library to input and output. So now we can start with our input components. Go to simulation and then library, and then if you search for constant, take the first block that you get, and now add 3 of them. Now we can start with actually putting in components that will change the value of these constants. So firstly, we're going to need a knob that will change the value of the low and high pressure. Now we can click on this button that says connect to connect it to this constant value. And then once you've done that, you can just select here, and then the connection is complete, and then you can just say done connecting. So now the value of this knob is connected to this constant value, which will be fed into our Simulink. Next, we're going to need a button to change between modes. And now once again we can click on this icon to connect it to this constant value. Once again, just select this, and then once the connection has been made, you can say done connecting. And then lastly, we're going to need to edit the breaths per minute for the system. So we're going to search for a component called an edit. So now we need some components for our output, and the first thing we need is a display to actually show in which mode the system is. So if you go to Simulation, Library Browser, and you search for display, don't choose this one, choose this one that actually allows a direct input from the Simulink chart, and then you can simply just drag and connect this. Now we're going to need a scope that will show the PWM signal and the humidity. So we can search for scope, and you can just choose the first one here. And then since we're going to have two signals coming into the scope, we need to change the number of inputs it has to 2. And now you can connect the PWM signal and the humidity signal to the scope. And now lastly, we're going to need some LEDs to actually show how the person is breathing in and out and how hard they are breathing in and out. So for that, we're going to need a lamp. So the thing with lamps are they actually need to be connected to another component. You can't simply drag the output of a Simulink chart into a lamp. So the way to get around this is to actually just add some more displays. So if I copy and paste this, then we can use these displays to actually connect them to the lamps. And now for the last step, we can connect each lamp to a display. So that is it for all the setup that is required for this project. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to actually code this chart to create all the logic for making an APAP system. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing,